What's the good word, y'all? Welcome to the New York Jets Syndicate channel. It's your boy DKB here, and let's cover why Lamar Jackson should realistically just be a fallback option that we don't invest a lot of time and resources in right now over our chances of trying to woo Aaron Rodgers to New York. And while that may sound crazy, right, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers coming up on the end of his career. We're talking about Lamar Jackson just entering his prime. There's a lot more, just below the surface as to why Lamar Jackson doesn't make a ton of sense for this roster right now and what we're trying to do. So if we wanted to start off at the helm of things, we have to think about the quarterback situation as a whole. We have this commitment to Zach Wilson, and that is being reinforced multiple times already, to the point where, it was mentioned that may be a concern for Derek Carr. Aaron Rodgers wouldn't have those same issues being a mentor as he plays out the rest of his career for the next 2, let's say 3 years max with the team. Whereas Lamar Jackson, not to say that he'll have to look over his shoulder, but that does essentially mean that the New York Jets team will have to tap out on Zach Wilson, and he'll almost guaranteed need to be traded within a year or two after trying to build some value, which could have been the same plan with Derek Carr, but you at least felt like there was some potential there. When you look at some of the next roadblocks with the Lamar Jackson trade, currently he's on the non-exclusive franchise tag that Baltimore recently provided to him. And while, the team ended up, the non-exclusive tag, I want to say, is like 10, 11 million dollars cheaper than the exclusive one. It gave Lamar the right to go out and be able to try to facilitate a trade with some of these other teams, right? There shouldn't be any shortage of teams in the NFL realistically, except maybe the Chiefs and maybe the Eagles that are willing to make, such a commitment to their quarterback that they don't, try to find out what Lamar Jackson's worth would be to try to essentially turn their team around. But when you take a look at Lamar Jackson's contracts, some of the things that I've heard that he's declined from the Ravens have been insane. We're talking about contracts that are somewhere between the range of 240, about 260 million, I think, was some of the last numbers that I've seen. And I've seen him turning down guarantees that I want to say were as high as like $180 million, somewhere in that range. And so the last details I know for sure were that he was looking to get a fully guaranteed contract somewhere in the range of Deshaun Watson's 5-year, $230 million. You would imagine, NFL inflation and all that good stuff, that maybe that's a couple $1 million higher than what Deshaun Watson would be looking like. But that is a huge financial commitment in and of itself. I mean, we're already trying to make moves just to restructure some contracts, set aside money to spend in free agency, set aside money to hopefully assume Aaron Rodgers' contract, which will need to be renegotiated restructured itself. And then you're still talking about money that you need to sit around for emergency purposes, as we've seen with, a numerous amount of tackles we had to go down, as well as signing our draft class. And so you don't want to be pushed, into a corner that you can't really, find a way out of just to fit Lamar Jackson's contract in. Now, the Chiefs have made it work. There's examples of these teams. The Browns, will see what they do and how they maneuver around these cap space issues. So it's possible. But at this current point in time, it wouldn't be the most prudent move for the New York Jets. Now, you also have to figure draft compensation as well will be factored into this. And a lot of us, kind of snorted at the fact that we want to give Aaron Rodgers potentially multiple first-round picks. Lamar Jackson in this age, it makes a lot more sense. You give him 2 number ones, and you end up being able to assume his rights. Let's say he gets a 4 or 5 year deal up until about 30, 31, and then he can go out and still get another mega contract again while you still consider him being in his twilight years. And so it would only cost 2 first-round picks, a luxury for a guy like Lamar Jackson. But again, at this point in time, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense. And I look at the Ravens specifically when I mention this because we'll get to the injury history in a minute here. But when you take a look at what the Ravens provided them, he had a superior environment to go and thrive in, right? You're talking about an offensive coordinator in Greg Roman, who's done excellent things with guys like Tyrod Taylor, Colin Kaepernick. We've seen that he made Lamar Jackson an MVP, in just the second year. And, you don't find that very, very often, especially as a guy that was so raw heading into the NFL that teams wanted him to switch positions to wide receiver and make things happen there based on his leg talent. So you look at the Ravens, they have an elite defense year in and year out that nobody really wants to go in and see. They have a above average, borderline elite offensive line year in and year out that they're able to go out there and build. And a lot of that ends up coming via draft. So they don't have to spend a lot of free agency resources there either. And they're pretty good about retaining their talent. Harbaugh, one of the best coaches in the NFL. Greg Roman was one of the best mobile quarterback offensive coordinators that you can find. And again, we talked about the defense. So when you factor in the offensive philosophy and kind of the identity that we've seen from the Ravens as well, a lot of that factors around the run game and the tight ends. Wide receiver has been a bit on the back burner, maybe kind of an afterthought, and we're seeing some fallout between like players and GM DaCosta in regards to how they are implemented in game plans. But nonetheless, you can't really look at Lamar Jackson joining the Jets and say we do this at a more effective rate or opportunity, chances, whatever you want to label it as, than what the Ravens have done. Coaching staff is more proven, offensive performance more proven, defenses you can say either on par, but still I'd give the nod to the Ravens based on what they've been able to do year in and year out. Having effective offenses has been part of that. And so you can't really say that there's going to be a seamless transition just because we pick up Lamar Jackson and he's young and we see the talent that he has. You would still need to consider what can the New York Jets do that the Ravens weren't able to do to kind of help unlock Lamar Jackson. Now, in terms of the injury history, he hasn't been the healthiest, right? His first 3 years were amazing. He's playing, all games, no concerns there. And then the last 2 years, we start to see probably the punishment on his body take a toll. And so we're talking 10 missed games. And then, playoffs come around. They make the playoffs. You would imagine a player does everything in their ability to go out there and play in the playoffs, and Lamar Jackson couldn't get it done. Now, whether that was a tactical move with him having contract negotiations that he's aware has been stalling for essentially 2 years now, or he really just couldn't go out there and, play to the level he would expect of himself. Either way, it's a little bit concerning. And so we've seen this before, right? When you want to take a look at some of the better mobile quarterback candidates that we've seen in, the last 5 to 10 years, the ones to stick out at the top of my head would be guys like RG3, guys like Cam Newton, that they were able to make it work for a while. But ultimately, this is the reason why a lot of teams love themselves a pocket passer with maybe a little bit of a elusiveness, but not a guy that, generally has to be such a huge element in the run game themselves to open themselves up to potential injury. And then when you look at the playoffs, Aaron Rodgers versus Lamar Jackson, it's not even really fair to compare. Patrick Mahomes is an outlier. Outside of that, you generally don't expect a lot of these rookie guys heading into their second contracts to be able to compare to established veterans like Aaron Rodgers. So you're talking Rodgers with this 11 and 10 playoff record versus Lamar Jackson and his 1-3 playoff record. And I think that also feeds a lot into not assuming there's going to be a seamless transition or that the New York Jets are suddenly going to be able to just provide such a better environment than what the Ravens did for Lamar Jackson to thrive in. He hasn't been able to reach an AFC championship game. And so that is a huge concern for me, whereas you've seen Rodgers lose multiple times in the championship game. Granted, a lot of that has been factored into, potential terrible calls and some late defensive special team, golfs Otherwise, Rodgers has been doing phenomenal in and of itself. So if talks with Aaron Rodgers don't go well, I would fully be on board with Lamar Jackson being one of the next best options that we can take a look at. But still, there's a lot of red flags just for me personally thinking about Lamar Jackson. And you know, that's kind of where I'll fall at with it. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Lamar Jackson, should we be pressing hard on both ends, pursuing Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson and taking whoever says yes? Or should we be all in on Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson truly is a backup plan? Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I'll catch you again. Peace.